Hello, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming. We will begin the discussion in the next 5 minutes. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Habibie Center, and thank you for joining today's Talking ASEAN. My name is Hannah, and I am a researcher at the ASEAN Studies Program. Today's topics: powering ASEAN, reconfiguring ASEAN energy security and resilience amid geopolitical tensions, could not be more timely. The recent escalation of geopolitical tensions, including the Iran-Israel conflict, has raised concerns on multiple fronts, especially regarding the intensified risk of global energy supply chains, which causing not only a spike of energy prices within a short period of time, but also further exposed the fragility of global energy flows. That incident has prompted countries, including ASEAN member states, to further reassess and strengthen their energy security and resilience strategies. Disruptions to the global energy supply chain have been recorded multiple times, posing both challenges and opportunities. Under Malaysia's ASEAN Chairmanship, which carries the theme of inclusivity and sustainability this year, the region has further placed greater emphasis on energy transition and climate change. Specifically on energy, this year's energy theme, Powering ASEAN, Bridging Boundaries, Building Prosperity, further sets the tone for addressing ASEAN's growing energy demands. Malaysia's ASEAN leadership also saw the adoption of the ASEAN Community Vision 2045, which projects that fossil fuel will remain dominant in the region energy mix, accounting for approximately more than 63% of total supply in 2050. As of 2024, ASEAN countries remain net importers of crude oil, with 92% sourced from outside the region, particularly from the Middle East. And that reliance leaves the region vulnerable to potential weaponization of supply chain in the future. Yet with challenges come opportunities. The ASEAN Community Vision 2045 also outlined potential measures embedded within the broader ASEAN connectivity agenda. And ASEAN has committed to developing a sustainable regional energy infrastructure and accelerating the energy transition, including but not limited to advancing the ASEAN power grid and the Trans-ASEAN gas pipeline. Hence, to explore this issue further, we are honored to welcome three distinguished speakers joining with us today. First, we have Pak Sofwan Albana Khairizat, PhD. Hello, Pak. He is an associate professor at the Department of International Relations, Universitas Indonesia, and associate fellow at the Habibie Center. He obtained his PhD and Master of Arts from the Graduate School of International Relations with Sumeikan University in Japan. He has written extensively, including but not limited to the political and socio-economic dimension of palm oil industry and ASEAN's evolving role in the Indo-Pacific region. Next, we also have Pak Beni Suryadi. Hello, Pak. Pak Beni is a senior manager of ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation at the ASEAN Center for Energy, or ACE. He has over 15 years of experience in leading, managing programs, and conducting research on energy and climate change, supporting the government of 10 countries in Southeast Asia to build climate-friendly development in the energy sector, including the development of the ASEAN power grid. Pak Beni also contributes actively to global energy transformation effort as a non-resident fellow at the Energy for Growth Hub at Washington, D.C. And Pak Beni obtained his Master of Engineering from Universitas Indonesia. Last but not least, we also have Mr. Kentaro Noma. Hello, Mr. Kentaro. And he currently serves as the Program Manager on Energy at Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, or area. And he obtained his Master of Engineering from the University of Tokyo. He has published articles on transition pathways and decarbonization modeling for ASEAN member states. And thank you so much, Pak Sofwan, Pak Beni, and Mr. Kentaro for your availability to join the Talking ASEAN event amidst your, I believe, very busy schedules. And before we begin, allow me to briefly outline the housekeeping rules. So each speaker will have around 15 minutes to share their insight. After that, we will open the floor for a moderated Q&A session. And we encourage participants, especially those attending in person, to probably move forward to fill the vacant seat at the front and to keep mobile phone on silent mode. We also encourage both in-person and online attendees via chat and comment features on YouTube platforms to actively engage, reflect, and definitely pose questions. And please follow the discussion in an orderly manner. And with that, let us begin our discussion. I would like to invite our first speaker, Pak Sofwan, to assess the current geopolitical tensions, including the Iran-Israel conflict and its potential risks to the global energy supply chain. Over to you, Pak Sofwan.
Thank you very much, Mazia, and thank you very much for the Habibie Center for providing me the opportunity to be here and sharing my views on a very important issue currently on the energy security in the region. Um but first, it is important when we are talking about energy security, the terminology of energy security is something that must be seen as a politically contested term. What does it mean by energy security? Uh, in a market-friendly definition, energy security refers to the availability and affordability of energy to the market. While in another definition, which is closer to a more strategic definition, energy security refers to the ability of, for example, a country or a particular entity to secure their access and control over energy in long-term period. And this is a very important issue because it is showing the intersections between different issues. We cannot talk about security without talking about geopolitics, trade, but at the same time also environment. And energy is historically always been at the core of geopolitics. 500 or 600 years ago, the world was fundamentally very different. The distribution of the global GDP was concentrated in East Asia and South Asia. South Asia, it's China and India were the major economic powerhouse at the time. But then, as we all know, the economic gravity then shifted to the west, to Europe, first in the British Empire, and then later to the United States. And now it's shifting back towards the east. But among the factors which lead to these shifts are about who controls the energy sources. Uh, if we look at history, one important historian on China, Kenneth Pomeranz, he is a University of Chicago historian who is now in Hong Kong and observed China for a long time. He mentioned that the cause of the great divergence between China and the British Empire in 500 or 500 years ago was because pretty much defined by the fact that the British control coal and the proximity of the coal sources towards the waterways. So it is the control over this coal which then becomes the one powering the Industrial Revolution, which established the British Empire as the empire at its heyday. The British rules the waves. Later, in early 20th century, the map was a bit changed because, and again, this is pretty much connected to the invention of another source of energy, oil. In 1901, oil was found in Iran, and in 1907, 1909, it starts to be commercially viable and extracted. And thus the fight to control the Middle East become one of the most important point of contentions between the imperial powers. That's why we are familiar with the history of the Sykes-Picot. We know the history of how these major powers are competing. We now know that in the end, the U.S. outwit the British Empire. The British Empire then ended and exit, and U.S. control over the production and trade and routes of oil has established the United States as the hegemonic power in the 20th century. So coal and who dominates it, oil and who dominates it, had been a force that shaped history. This is why when we are talking about energy, we are not only talking about powering electrical things or powering economic activities. It is also about power in terms of international politics. Uh, these intersections need to be understood when we are looking and trying to understand why it is important for ASEAN to have its own vision and develop its leverage in developing its energy sector, especially through accelerating just energy transition, not as something that is imposed from outside, but something that ASEAN actually should lead for its own interest, rather than, I mean, as I mentioned, the coal and oil was crucial in defining international politics. Now there are a lot of calls to renewable energy, and if ASEAN is not investing enough in securing control and independence over these new sources of energy, ASEAN might be an arena where the great powers are competing for influence, and we are left with uh, being fragmented. But now, let us move to the bigger picture first, before then going to the energy competition first. Let us look at the ASEAN. ASEAN sees itself as in the epicenter of global growth. A few years ago, Indonesia's chairmanship on ASEAN take the slogan, the epicenter of growth. ASEAN is indeed an important epicenter among the global epicenters of growth, with economic development continues to expand in this region. But at the same time, it is also an epicenter of climate change. For example, we see that there are a rising incidents of extreme weather. We also witness the impacts of climate change in this region significantly, because many of in this region are living in the coastal areas. Another epicenter in which ASEAN is at the center is the epicenter of geopolitical rivalry. If 20th century is defined by the heartland, 21st century is defined by two seas. And those two seas are Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean, and ASEAN is in the middle of it. So this is the basically ASEAN century. We are in the middle of the climate crisis, at the center of the climate crisis. We are at the center of the global economy, and we are at the center of the global geopolitical rivalry. The issue is, if we are at the center of the stage, are we the main player, or despite being in the central stage, we are NPCs, non-playable characters, and not playing. I mean, we are not the MCs according to the current generation, right? I mean, the MC aura. You know? We do not have that MC aura. We are only becoming the recipient on the receiving end of this all development. We are in the receiving end of the climate crisis. We are in the receiving end of the geopolitical rivalry. So ASEAN needs to take its role further. ASEAN should not wait for other actors to define the fate of ASEAN. Let's move. Furthermore, in terms of energy, it is important to look that the decoupling imperative is not something that comes externally. We do really need this internally. If we look at the Kaya identity, the Kaya identity is a mathematical formula that estimates carbon dioxide emissions from human activities, which is often used to understand and analyze the main drivers of carbon emission. There are 4 factors that drive the emission rate: GDP, per capita, population, energy intensity, and carbon intensity. In ASEAN, these 4 trends are still showing persistent trends of growth, and it affects ASEAN people significantly. We see that over the past 5 decades, climate change-induced disasters have affected over 580 million people, with over 435,000 fatalities, and caused over 235 billion USD in damages. And it is expected that these are going to increase with the increasing incidence of extreme weather events. But this is only a small part of the impacts of the climate change. Climate change affects not only through direct impact, but through systematic impacts as well. Let's move. So these are the push and pull factors which is important for ASEAN to consider, that it is important to take the ownership of the energy transition agenda as part of its effort to secure energy security, as well as its broader agenda of strategic autonomy. And a very significant part of it is by decreasing fossil fuel dependency, because if ASEAN is continue to be dependent on fossil fuels, and fossil fuel were very much vulnerable towards the geopolitical dynamics, then ASEAN will also be vulnerable too. Let's move. And looking at that, we see that ASEAN is pretty much committed towards climate commitments. But let's move. Yeah, this is what we see. Investment in renewable energy is still very much limited in ASEAN, and ASEAN is still very much dependent on fossil fuel to meet its energy demand, which continues to increase. Let's move. So it is important for ASEAN to accelerate its efforts for energy transition. Let's move. But these are the challenges and the limitations as well as the opportunities in ASEAN, which is also affected by the global political and economic situation. First, I think there are three categories of limitations. First is institutional, the continuity and consistency issues to the diverse priorities of ASEAN member countries and the limited authority of ASEAN as a regional institution. Second, fragmentation of energy and climate agenda in ASEAN. And the second category of limitations is political, path dependency to business as usual approach, limited ambition, limited depth of regional cooperation, and prioritization of economic development agenda, both others. And the third limitation is financial infrastructure. Opportunities, we see that there is a global momentum. Currently, investment in renewable energy has surpassed investment in fossil fuel globally, although still very limited in the region. But the global momentum continues. There is a stronger call for investing in emerging markets, increasing successful projects in emerging market and developing economies, and more experience in managing renewable energy projects. And ASEAN has this unique geopolitical position with rising interest by major powers to develop more partnership in the region. But there is also an increasing risk. First is, of course, the intensifying geopolitical rivalry, which will mean decrease in clean energy investment, and then the disruption and fragmentation of supply chain, and also the entanglement of economic cooperation with political alignment. For example, in the recent deal between Indonesia and the United States, one of the concessions that Indonesia gave to Donald Trump is the agreement to develop a joint monitoring and cooperation in the critical minerals. As we know, critical minerals are critical because this is an important component for these new renewable energies. And currently the US is pretty much feeling vulnerable in this sector because the supply chain is pretty much dominated by China. For example, Indonesia is a major producer of nickel. It's the world's largest producer of nickel, with more than 30%, around 35% is in Indonesia, and also cobalt. But most of these are then processed with the help of Chinese investment currently. The United States see critical minerals as one of the arena where it is pretty much lagged behind China, and thus, of course, it will affect how the US and other countries approach this issue. We see, for example, that there are competing mechanisms in which now we see that there are Chinese investment are dominating the critical mineral investment in Indonesia, but at the same time the US and other Western powers are pushing for some regulatory and governance agreements in the MSG form. So it is important then for ASEAN to develop its own vision in managing these aspects as well, including in the critical minerals. But it is going to be increasingly difficult because of the entanglement of economic cooperation and political alignment. Without clear vision, without clear direction, without joint initiative at the regional level, ASEAN countries will have less leverage to negotiate with these great powers and will be forced to be, how to say, to choose between one of these great powers. But there is also another important trend, which is the changing U.S. position on climate change. Donald Trump has already reversed more than 130 environmental regulations, and part of it is also motivated by the competition in energy. Drill, baby, drill, right? One of the first statement in the inauguration ceremony is drill, baby, drill, and we see how the US, not only the fossil fuel, but also trying to catch up in the renewable energy, including in critical minerals, including mining in the deep sea, which will also affect the UNCLOS, which is a very important international regime for Indonesia. But looking forward for your feedbacks and further discussion, but I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your insightful thoughts on the geopolitical aspects of energy and also the importance for ASEAN to decouple from carbon-intensive energy by accelerating a just energy transitions. And such efforts also a way to withstand the weaponization of the global energy supply chain in times of crisis by becoming a more self-reliant regions. Now I would like to invite our second speaker, Mr. Kentaro, to enlighten us on the current state of ASEAN energy and security and resilience, and also ASEAN's policies and priorities under 2025 Malaysia's chairmanships, including challenges and opportunities ahead. Over to you, Mr. Kentaro.
Thank you very much. Selamat sore. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the Habibie Center for organizing this important dialogue, powering ASEAN, configuring ASEAN's energy security and resilience amidst geopolitical tensions. It is a great honor to join this discussion for me. I also want to extend my appreciation to the participants gathering here for your time and attention. I am Kentaro Noma, Program Manager on Energy at Area. And before joining Area, I worked at the Japanese power company, where I was engaged in their plant operator and also the researcher for their corporate environment analysis. At Area, I belong to the Asia Zero Emission Center, which was launched in there around 1 year ago. And I conducted research and related activities to support the concept of the Asia Zero Emission Community, ASEC, which is the multilateral cooperation framework aimed at achieving their decarbonization across Asia. So please go to the next slide. Today, I'm going to share some key perspectives on ASEAN's energy security and transition according to the three talking points. First, the current and the future state of ASEAN's energy security and resilience. The second point is challenges and opportunities in ASEAN's pursuit of energy security. And third point, ASEAN's policies and priorities under 2025 Malaysia's chairmanship. So now let me begin with the first point, the current future state of ASEAN's energy security and resilience, by referring the current state or the future possible energy transition landscape in ASEAN. So when looking at the current energy landscape in ASEAN, driven by robust economic growth and associated growing energy demand, ASEAN's primary energy supply increased at an average annual rate of 3% between 2005 and 2022. However, the region still relies heavily on fossil fuels for its energy needs, with more than 80% of increasing in energy supply during this period being met by additional fossil fuel supply, particularly additional coal supply. This means that the ASEAN economic growth remains highly dependent on fossil fuels consumption. In many advanced economies, we have seen a decoupling between GDP growth and CO2 emissions, but in ASEAN, a strong relationships still persists. ASEAN has abundant natural resources. Coal and natural gas are net export commodities in this region, but more than 90% of oil is currently imported. A significant portion of these oils comes from the Middle East, with Saudi Arabia and UAE together accounting for about half of ASEAN's crude oil imports from outside ASEAN. This concentration creates a substantial supply risk, especially given the recent geopolitical tensions in the Middle East. And from the perspective of achieving carbon neutrality and enhancing energy security, it is essential to reduce both fossil fuel consumption and fossil fuel import. However, it is also important to advance the energy transition in a phased manner while paying attention to its impact on the economy and the affordability of the energy. So considering the region's high dependence on fossil fuels and its strong economic growth, solving the energy trilemma, balancing economic growth and energy security, and also the decarbonization, is particularly challenging for the ASEAN region. So in this regard, to seek the transition scenarios, area is analyzing least cost carbon neutral pathways for ASEAN and the carbon neutrality targets by using optimal technology selection model. This model combines both comprehensiveness and granularity. This model covers the entire energy system from primary supply to final energy consumption and considers more than 350 energy-related technologies in this model with 4-hour resolution for power sector. We use inputs such as the final energy demand, cost and process efficiency, and constraints, including the CO2 emission pathway and available natural resources. And then, based on these inputs, the model runs cost-optimal calculations across the whole sector, and we will get the optimal technology selection and energy emission composition, and also the financial indicators as an output. So this is the basic analysis flow of the scenario. Our carbon neutral analysis shows that the gas shift and electrification will be two key strategies for ASEAN to achieve carbon neutrality. Natural gas as the cleanest fossil fuel is expected to continue playing an important role in ASEAN's energy supply, with the possibility of being combined with offset technologies such as carbon capture and storage in the long run. As the energy transition advances, electricity will account for an increasing share of final energy consumption, as shown in the right-hand side figure. And ASEAN's electrification rate is currently around 20%, but it is projected to increase 30% by 2050, reflecting the shift towards cleaner and more efficient form of the energy use. So ensuring both gas supply security and also the electricity system security will become increasingly important policy agendas for ASEAN regions. Now let's move on to the second point, challenges and opportunities in ASEAN's pursuit of energy security, focusing on the key two elements, gas supply security and electricity system security, as I mentioned earlier. When looking at the production and consumption balance of the natural gas in this region, while regional gas demand is increasing now, but the gas production is on declining trend by 3% per year, due to the maturation and depletion of the gas field. Although ASEAN is currently a net exporter of gas, the ASEAN Energy Outlook baseline scenario projects that the region will become a net importer by 2027. In the scenario of pursuing carbon neutrality, which requires substantial gas shift in the energy supply, this trend is expected to become even greater in the long run. Given this forthcoming gas balance shift in the future, ASEAN can take several approaches. The first three, gas strengths in domestic gas production. Gas field exploration is being conducted in several countries, such as Malaysia and so on. And secondly, regional pipelines and LNG infrastructure. The Trans-ASEAN Gas Pipeline, TAGP, is one of the flagship infrastructure initiatives to strengthen energy security and promote market integration in this region. And several cross-border pipelines are already in operation, but the building new physical pipelines in this region requires substantial amount of investment and also complex permitting and long lead times, which often stretching over a decade from planning to commencement. So given these realities, expanding LNG terminal capacity can be a practical and a strategic complement, including the FSRUs unit. So in addition to the physical real pipeline, this partial network in this region would enhance supply flexibility and security. And thirdly are diversified supply sources, contracts, and trading mechanisms. In addition to seek various sources of origins, diversifying contract structures is equally important. A balanced approach combining long-term contract baseload security with short-term or spot purchases for flexibility can help manage cost and supply flexibility. Expanding third-party access to energy terminal is also important in terms of allowing multiple buyers and sellers to use the same infrastructure. This can create a more competitive and flexible market within ASEAN. Lastly, strategic stockpiling and inventory sharing. While ASEAN country does not have a stockpiling mechanism yet, strategic gas stockpiling can provide a buffer against supply disruptions, price shocks. One idea is to create an institutional framework by referring neighbor countries such as Japan, where the government is securing energy buffer in collaboration with private sector. And also, the ASEAN could develop a regional gas emergency response protocol by the experience coordinating the ASEAN Petroleum Security Agreement in the past. When looking at the generation mix transformation in the future, yeah, energy security of mic. Sorry. Yeah, ASEAN has limited wind potential, so solar power will play a central role among renewables according to our carbon neutral scenario analysis. Solar generation output fluctuates significantly during the day, increasing the viability of remaining demand, making that curve severer, and requiring more complex system operations in the future. These are significant opportunities to introduce new clean technologies, but there is also a trade-off between reducing costs through select one, build more, and the increased geopolitical risk from dependence on specific technologies or countries or suppliers. Based on the possible transformation of the power mix in the future, I'd like to highlight several approaches to enhance the electricity system. The first one is strengthening regional interconnections. Cross-regional grid coordination such as ASEAN Power Grid initiatives enables renewable viability to be smoothed out over a wider geographic area and allowing surplus electricity to be shared among the countries. RPDR, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore Power Integration Project began cross-border electricity trade in 2022, and we should actively discuss this kind of multi-country interconnections from now on. And secondly, the maintain dispatchable capacity and deploy flexible resources. The conventional dispatchable generation, such as gas-fired power plants, will remain a stable backbone during the transition, complementing variable energy output. In addition, exploring new flexible sources like battery, hydrogen-based storage, and demand-side flexibility is also important factor. The third point is to leverage digital and smart grid technologies. The advanced forecasting system and AI-assisted dispatch system can optimize the integration of solar and wind by predicting output and demand patterns more accurately. Cybersecurity measures will be also the critical matter to protect increasingly digitalized and interconnected power system in the future. The lastly, diversify technology portfolios. ASEAN faces a trade-off. Concentrating on single technology or the supplier can reduce the cost through the scale, but also the increasing the geopolitical and supply chain risk. Yeah, so it's a balanced approach is very important. And also supporting regional manufacturer for critical components like solar PV modules or battery storage system can help build resilience in this region. So this is simply the summary table of what I said. So let me skip this slide and go to the next contents. I'd like to talk about the ASEAN's policies and priorities and 2025 Malaysia's chairmanship. Today, I have been focusing on the gas supply chain, gas supply security, and also sorry, electricity system security, along with the possible future energy transition scenario. However, challenges in both gas supply system and electricity system, such as the geopolitical risks, infrastructure gaps, and dependence on specific technologies, are difficult for individual countries to address alone. So this reality underscored the importance of regional cooperation among the countries. Under Malaysia's chairmanship, energy security and energy transition have been elevated as critical priorities. The framework for regional cooperation, such as Trans-ASEAN gas pipeline and ASEAN Power Grid, are to be prioritized not only in terms of the optimizing the resources among the region, and also means of ensuring collective security in this region. Yeah, this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to continuing discussing with you. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Kentaro, for offering us with such a comprehensive viewpoint, particularly on addressing the energy trilemma, balancing act between energy security, energy affordability, and environmental sustainability. And before I turn to the last speaker, I would like to gently remind our audience on YouTube that you can write down your questions and comment using the live chat feature. And I would like to invite our last speaker, Pak Benny, to enlighten us on ASEAN's Energy Cooperation Action Plan post-2025 and strategies and alternative approaches to advance sustainable regional energy infrastructure. Over to you, Pak Benny.
Very good afternoon, everyone. Let me start by thanking the Habibie Center for inviting me, representing the ASEAN Center for Energy, to join the discussion this afternoon on the Powering ASEAN. As our MC introduced, my name is Beni Suryadi. I'm working for the ASEAN Center for Energy. It's part of the ASEAN system, where our organization is responsible on behalf of the 10 ASEAN member states, soon to be 11, to coordinate and lead the implementation of the various energy cooperation at the regional levels, including to support the chairmanship of ASEAN, where we have Malaysia this year, as well as the other 9 or 10 ASEAN member states in driving the energy policy, the energy agenda, be it at regional level and national levels. And I will be speaking about what we do at the regional context, building from what Pak Sofyan earlier mentioned, and also colleagues from area, Mr. Kentaro Noma. I started by emphasizing that the huge challenge the ASEAN is encountering, particularly on the energy sectors. Different with other region in other part of the world. I mean, we might talking about China and India as a special case. But Sofyan mentioned earlier that the ASEAN region is the center of growth, particularly on the energy sectors. We are looking from the projection that we have coming from our own studies, Kentaro Noma is also presented earlier, for the next 20, 30 years down the road, that ASEAN expected to require 2.6 times higher energy demand compared to what we consume today. It's a 260% increase from what we consume today. To put in perspective, right, the US for the next 20 or 30 years is only going to increase 30 or 40%. Japan, I mean, it's very low. I mean, there is addition on the AI and data centers demand may increase the demand on the energy, but the number is less. EU, the European Union might expect a plateau or declining energy demand for the next 20, 30 years. Because they are developed countries, everything is so efficient, and compared to where we are in the region context, is the demand will growing 2.6 times. This is under the business as usual scenario that we have. If we continue to grow at the assuming a regional level at the 5 to 6%, or even Indonesia is driving at the 8%. So there is a massive challenge that ASEAN is encountering. And we come to the conclusion that the only way to address it, the only way to manage with all of this issue, all of this problem, is 10 countries, or plus one, soon to be 11, to sit down and work collaboratively, to work in tandem, to work in harmonies, or work in collaboration. As Pak Sofyan mentioned earlier, that if ASEAN is not able to elevate our own strength, that ASEAN will be just a market or the end of the supply chains. So under this principle, among us that last May in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, that the 10 leaders from the ASEAN countries under the leadership of the Prime Minister of Malaysia as the current chair of the ASEAN, together with all of the leaders, Pak Prabowo, or the also Prime Minister of Thailand, and everyone, adopt what we call it ASEAN Share Futures, the vision for 2045, that how we are in this region, 10, again, soon to be 11, to collaboratively address all the issues that we are encountering. So we are talking on the vision of the ASEAN future, ASEAN share future, because we believe that Indonesia alone will not be able to address all the issues. Malaysia alone is not will be able. Thailand is alone. But together, collectively, that the ASEAN will be able to continue push our economic growth, continue to secure our energy demand, continue to bring our prosperity to the higher levels. So this is a document that being endorsed by the 10 leaders, translated into the ASEAN 2045, our share futures. The vision is a continuation from the previous ASEAN Economic Blueprint 2025, the Forging Road Ahead. Will seek to elevate the ASEAN position as an effective global player that can contribute positively and meaningfully to the global development. Again, to build from Sofian mentioned that how the ASEAN will play a role in the context of the geopolitics today between the major powers in the region. And to put it in a concrete idea, in the concrete excellence, the share futures vision that we aim in 2045 is being translated into a number of the sectoral plan. I presented here the ASEAN Economic Community Strategic Plan, which, if everyone recall, the ASEAN has three pillars: economics, culture, and another one is the politics, if I correctly remember that one. But this one is looking in the context of the ASEAN Economic Community Strategic Plan, particularly for the next 5 years period that we are looking for. So we have a vision for 2045, what we want in the next 20 years, but ASEAN set steps, set a pathway, set an action that what we are going to do for next year, the next 2 years, down the road to the next 5 years. It has 6 strategic goals, 44 objectives, and 192 strategic measures. So it's covering everything. But what is important that I would like to emphasize is the difference with the previous. I mean, ASEAN is very famous to having a lot of document, strategic plan A, B, C, D, etc. We are very famous on that, producing 1,000 of the document. But what is different with this document is it's encompass an integration from all of the sectors that we have in ASEAN. So previously, the energy sectors might have their own plan going to one direction. The agriculture sectors might have their own plan going to a different direction. Other sectors will also have their own plan is going to the maybe a different direction. But under this new ASEAN 2045 strategy, share futures, and then particularly on the strategic plan that ASEAN is working on, and integration of all of the issue that we are dealing. So take an example, when we are working, particularly in my context, I'm working on energy sectors. We used to be only working with the energy peoples. But nowadays that we fully understand that energy is not an isolated case, right? Energy need to talk about with economic, because you need money, you need finance. I mean, talking about the energy security on one side is also a concern of the country's GDP, because some countries like Indonesia is relying on the energy to generate the income. Talking energy is related to the climate change, right? Part of it is also show that the CO2 emission that the country, that ASEAN is also generating. So this is in my own terminology, the beauty of the strategic plan that currently the ASEAN is adopting, where we are looking into a integrated vision from all of the sectors. And I'm coming from the energy sector, so we do have what we call it energy contribution. So there are some part, for example, B9, that build a supportive ecosystem to unlock green economy potential, to enhance resilience via climate adaptation, and to accelerate the decarbonization of the regional supply chains. So there are 5 strategic measures. 1 is being led by the energy sectors. 4 is being led by the climate change or the other sectors where energy is part of it to support this kind of thing. And others they see that pursue the energy security, affordability, and sustainability. So the energy sector in the front desk of this all efforts, but of course engaging the climate sectors, engaging the political sectors, engaging environment sector, all of the pillars. Of course, it's not an easy task because all we know that the silo and the discussion on the cross-sectoral is a very, very challenging at ASEAN context, or in, I assuming in Indonesia context is quite a similar case that we're having. But at least there is a commitment from the 10 leaders that how we are going to drive this effort. And move specifically on energy sectors, what we do in ASEAN is guided by the ASEAN Economic Community Blueprint and go down to the energy sector. We call it ASEAN Plan of Action for the Energy Cooperation, and it's being translated to the national policy. So the Indonesia have its national policy having 23% target on renewable energy, for example, is very much aligned and running from the what we have at the regional context. So the current plan is going to be ended this year. What we call it, the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation PAS 2 2021-2025. So it's look on the essence to enhance the energy connectivities and market integration to making sure that we have the energy security, we have accessibility, we have affordability and sustainability for all. And all of the 10 countries in ASEAN is very diverse. Some of them is blessed with fossil fuels. Like Indonesia, we have coal. Vietnam, they also have coal. Myanmar have a natural gas. Indonesia, some contexts also have natural gas. Brunei and Malaysia. Some of them blessed with renewable energy, like Laos in hydro. So it's a very, very a lot of the variation on that one. So that's why the ASEAN is adopting all fuels policy or technology neutral approach. So meaning to say that in what we're doing, ASEAN is addressing all sectors. So we are talking at 7. In ASEAN terminology, we call it program area, but it's a sectors. So we are looking at the ASEAN power grids that Kentaro-san has mentioned earlier. We are looking on the Trans-ASEAN gas pipeline. We are looking on the coal. We are looking on the effort to reduce our energy consumption or enhance our energy intensities. As Pak Sofwan has also mentioned the Kaya indicator that we have earlier to bring more renewable energy, to integrate more on the ASEAN perspective, and last but not least to explore the use of the nuclear to fulfill our demand. And I narrowed doing my discussion to one of the flagship projects, regional massive effort that currently running, what we call it ASEAN power grids. So this is the idea, it's actually coming from the 20-30 years ago. The idea is how to integrate the electricity system in all of the ASEAN countries. The idea is, in simple way, when I'm explaining to my kids, is you having a power plant in Myanmar is connected to the system where you can use the electricity being produced from that power plant in your home in Bali. So that's the idea, right? They're having an integrated power system from all of the 10 ASEAN countries. Why we need to do that? Why we need to harness? Why we need to have the electricity far away coming from Laos to Singapore, right? Why you don't just build your own power plant in your own countries or near to your own countries, right? The idea is, this also happened in the context of Indonesia, that the source and the demand is not aligned, right? For example, that we have a lot of hydro in Kalimantan, but the demand is here in Java, right? ASEAN has a lot of hydro potential in Laos, right? But their demand is not that much, right? The demand center is in Singapore. So that's why ASEAN build a cross-border interconnection, bringing the electricity that produced in Laos goes to Thailand, goes to Malaysia, and goes to the household at home that can be used, the electricity to be switched at home in Singapore, right? So this is, and as we are speaking about the renewable energy, so the cost is very affordable. And this is also an effort for the ASEAN that as we having integrated, so the countries will be able to also address their concern on the climate change at the same time on the energy. On the climate change, like I take example that's energy security on the energy. Thailand, rather than Thailand build their own power plant, which is coming from coal, right? It's better for them to connect the electricity coming from renewable energy or hydro from Laos. So at the same time that if the Thailand is only referring to their own capacity to achieve the energy security or to achieve the NDC, the climate change target, it will be very challenging. Same context with Singapore. Singapore doesn't have, they doesn't have it all. I mean, they have a solar, the solars that can be harnessed in the rooftop, but that's it. 99.9% the electricity coming from natural gas. A tiny fraction is coming from coal. But so how Singapore will be able to go with all the climate change? That's the only way is to harness the electricity coming from renewable energy. It can come from Laos, it can come from Indonesia, for examples, right? So we have a lot of renewable energy source in Sumatra. If Indonesia is only to build it for our own needs, the cost is very high because the demand is not that much. But by tapping the partnership with the Singapore, the levering, the Singapore strong and the finance, then ASEAN will, Indonesia will be able to construct our own so that we can harness our own electricity coming renewably, but we can also get an income generated from the electricity that we sell from Singapore. So this is the way that ASEAN is currently doing it. In the more broader context, I put it earlier that ASEAN need higher demands, but so the ASEAN power grid put a value that integration that can bring 3 trillion potential is GDP add, so it will benefit all of the country in the ASEAN region, and then it will bring 1.45 million of direct and lifetime jobs. As everyone is aware that ASEAN is a free flow of the skilled laborers. So an engineer from the Indonesia can work in other countries in the ASEAN region. There will be my last slides, putting a list online that we are currently doing. So it's all the idea that to connect all of the countries in ASEAN region, where we will be able to harness 62 potential solar and wind projects. Indonesia, if everyone is recall, is also have a similar spirit. They call it a Nusantara grid. Try to connect Indonesia, Java, Sumatra, Kalimantan, Sulawesi into some context as well with the Papua. The idea is same, that how having integration will help us to enhance our energy securities and also addressing the economics context. So that's end of my presentation, and happy to have a follow-up discussion with all the panels and all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Babini, for sharing such a valuable perspective and information with us, especially on the updates on the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, including on the ASEAN Power Grids. And ladies and gentlemen, now we turn to the Q&A sessions. And before I pick a few questions from YouTube, I'll give chances to audience here first. So for those of you who want to ask questions, kindly raise your hand. Yeah, for gentleman over there. Yes. Oh, yes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Over there first. Okay. And before posing your questions, please state your name and affiliation, and kindly stand up as well. And keep your questions concise and relevant.
Okay, first of all, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Raden Putro. I am from Universitas Pertamina. I have a questions about wait. Okay, so I have a questions about the geopolitical tensions that happens in Asian country. In the context of the empowering ASEAN, reconfiguring Asian energy security and resilience amidst geopolitical tensions, we know that Asia's influence in the global arena is still not significant enough, especially in leading the renewable energy transition. Indonesia, for example, has a strategic advantage in nickel and cobalt, reserves that are crucial for the renewable energy technologies. But the most of the production is still done by the other countries such as China. How do you think about Asians can capitalize on these strategic resources potentially to strengthen the regional energy security while enhancing its position and influence amidst the geopolitical tensions? Thank you.
To whom your questions?
For the Mr.
Pak
Sofwan.
Okay.
Okay.
For a gentleman over here. Yes, please stand up and state your name and affiliations.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want to.
So what's your name?
I'm
and
sorry.
affiliation is okay.
My name is Iqbal Saputra. I'm individual researcher, and I want to talk about geopolitical tension perspective. We know that ASEAN has been promoted as one of the region with the most dynamic economic integration in the world, supporting growth through a supply chains network that is closely connected to the global market, efficient logistic infrastructure, cross-country hub and spoke structure, as well as geographical position in strategic maritime routes such as the Strait of Malacca and the South China Sea, make this region vital hub for international trade. However, behind the success narrative, there is a paradox that is rarely discussed. Connectivity that strengthens ASEAN's competitiveness, as well as forms a systemic vulnerability that makes it vulnerable to external shock. In the era of great power rivalry and the global economic fragmentation, making the South China Sea a hot area of competition. And my question is, does the integration of the ASEAN supply chains really form a structural vulnerability that can make this region a weak point in the stability of energy supply trade? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Bening. I formerly conducted research on solar energy in the UK. I have a question about how binding is that document of 2045 shared future, because Kentaro Nomasan has mentioned about importance of gas and renewable goods, and at the moment ASEAN member states can make businesses with countries outside ASEAN itself. So for, let's say, gas purchases and renewable goods, do you think there will be an increase in like purchases within ASEAN itself, or member states can still do business freely? Because I just want to know how this shared future will go about with this gas and renewable goods purchases. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. So second round, yes. Oh yeah. So, okay, Reina.
Hi, good afternoon. This is San from the Korea Mission to ASEAN. Mr. Benny mentioned about the nuclear energy, maybe the part of the APAEC post-2025. So I've also read that a lot of ASEAN member states, for example, the Philippines and Singapore, they are talking about inviting nuclear energy from elsewhere, especially the SMR, the small modular reactor. So do you I want to know whether the nuclear energy will be really feasible in the region, and also second, in terms of safety and all that. And I think it will also bring another geopolitical rivalry, maybe from the dialogue partners, including South Korea. So I want to know the opinions from the panels. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And here, yeah.
Hello everyone, I'm Reina Huang from Taipei Trade and Economic Office. I would like to ask all of the speakers about the regional renewable energy collaboration. Because Taiwan is currently pushing our Energy 2.0 transition, we are focusing on expanding the green energy such as solar and wind power. So I would like to know about what is your views on the current So I would like to learn about what is your view on the current development of the current stage of green energy development among the ASEAN countries, and perhaps where Taiwan could have opportunities to collaborate, particularly as a technological exporter in this area. Thank you.
Okay. So the first question is from Radin Putra from Universitas Pertamina, dedicated to Pak Sofan. So how ASEAN, particularly Indonesia, can capitalize on myriad resources of renewable energy?
Okay. Thank you very much. First of all, on what ASEAN can do amidst the great power rivalry, I think the bottom line is that if ASEAN is not taking the initiative, ASEAN will be on the receiving end of this development without much say. So what can ASEAN do amidst this geopolitical rivalry and its impact on the renewable energy? I think first let us build on what ASEAN has already done. For example, ASEAN have some mechanisms that is already in place, such as the ASEAN Minerals Cooperation Action Plan and other initiatives, which could be the baseline for cooperation in the region. But since energy is often perceived as a national strategic interest, countries are not willing to progress with this regional initiative. But I think then it is time for ASEAN to push further this regional coordination in issues such as critical minerals and renewable energy investment. And then second, I think it is important for ASEAN to diversify its energy cooperation. So it is important to avoid dependency to one of the major powers. So one side, ASEAN needs to engage with China, but at the same time, it needs to attract more Western investment to ensure the diversified relationship and to ensure that renewable energy developments is not becoming another instrument for dependency and geopolitical rivalry. Third, I think it is then important to develop a joint governance mechanism to ensure transparency and harmonization of different regulations in the region, because currently the region have different regulations related to energy, different governance mechanisms, different rules, even different definitions of different parts of the energy sector, the renewable energy sector, and that creates joint initiative and connectivity is very difficult. So it is important to develop this. And I think it is also important to then work with other partners, including geopolitical rivals. I mean, both China and the US, as well as other great powers like Japan, Korea, Australia, increasingly see Southeast Asia as an important region. So it is important then to leverage this, to work together with all of these external partners in this increasingly fragmented world. Maybe it's difficult for these great powers to work with its rivals, but ASEAN could position itself as the honest broker, as the bridge builder between this situation. We need, amidst this geopolitical rivalry, we need to remind these great powers that there are more creative imagination than the Thucydides trap. We should not let the great power rivalry defines the region and beyond. And this can only happen if ASEAN take the leadership and remind these great powers that rather than competition, actually if you let ASEAN becoming central in the regional cooperation, actually everyone can be benefiting from it. So I think ASEAN needs to be more assertive. ASEAN needs to bring this sensitive agenda, such as energy transition and energy security, in its own table by inviting other actors, maybe through East Asian Summit or other platforms that ASEAN has. ASEAN could also work with external partners in making ASEAN as the hubs of renewable energy, because this region has a lot of potentials. Let me check a bit. And there are some recommendations. Could I get the slides from the decoupling imperative part? So first, ASEAN should seriously pursue institutional reform to ensure effective and sustainable implementation of its initiatives. Second, ASEAN should develop a cross-pillar roadmap or blueprint. Next slide. Next slide. Yes. Third, ASEAN needs to continuously develop perception alignment between the AMS. And so from these recommendations, I think ASEAN could develop a stronger presence in the renewable energy sector. But the bottom line is ASEAN needs to take initiative for itself and not waiting for the great powers to define the governance of renewable energy in the region. I think that's for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak Sofwan. Now it's the questions from Iqbal Saputra, individual researchers dedicated to Pak Beni. Yeah, so the paradox of connectivity, that it may pose systematic vulnerability in an era of geopolitical tension. Does the integration create another layer of vulnerability, Pak?
Thank you. It's very difficult to respond that. But if I may to combine my response to the question to Mas Raden. The first one, the first Mas Raden, that's how to capitalize it, and then Mas Iqbal is looking the connectivity and the chain, supply chain that we are working on. But Bening juga mentioned about that how binding that we are, what we're doing in ASEAN. So in general, that's in the common there is no binding thing in ASEAN. That's unlike EU, that ASEAN is adopted as different system. Of course, there is like a digital digital roadmap that ASEAN is adopting that could be to be followed, but in the bigger context, the ASEAN, there is no binding thing. ASEAN, as I mentioned earlier, ASEAN has a lot of roadmap, has a lot of document that being issued, provide a guidance, provide instruction, provide an idea on the how to move forward with all of this thing. But trying to be honest to us, I mean, as researchers working on the issue of the ASEAN for 15 years, like the quote unquote the problem with ASEAN is, even though that we are a group of the 10 countries, to many contexts, the ASEAN still work individually. So I mean, like, if the question that how to capitalize the leverage all the plan, ASEAN must work as a single entity in ASEAN. That's it. When we are dealing with the US, when we are dealing with the China, ASEAN must speak collectively as a 10 nation, right? So in order for us to capitalize our resource, that Indonesia is very great, having great resource on the nickel and all of critical mineral, right? But personally, that I think is also very challenging for Indonesia to capitalize its own resource, and also at the same time dealing with a great power like China or US. That ASEAN, Indonesia must step its ASEAN team in order to push this effort. It's all the same issue. We're talking about nickel. We're talking supply chains, and ASEAN is also has adopted a supply chains. But the problem is it's not properly translated into what the countries is doing. So that's why I started in the beginning that this is a great time for ASEAN, because at the very high levels, the document is integrated everything, making sure, providing a guidance for all sectors to work collaboratively. The homework right now is that how it's be translated into the national level, into the sectoral thing. Right? If I may also thoughts on the gas, right? ASEAN, as a region,
we are going to be a net importer of the natural gas in 2027 or 2028, right? ASEAN is already an oil importer from the 1995, right? We still have a lot of coal, but if continue to use at the same rate today, in 2040, ASEAN will be also a net importer of coal, right? But what is in front of us is ASEAN's going to be a net importer of natural gas, right? So I'm not talking individual countries, I'm talking about the whole ASEAN's level, right? Import so when we come a net importer, that we need to source out from somewhere out there. Are we looking to the Middle East, or are we looking to the US with all of their shale gas, right? This is a thing that we are trying to also push at ASEAN levels. For ASEAN, the 10 countries, to work as a consortium when they are purchasing the natural gas from the other region. So it's not Indonesia is only dealing with the US to import the LNG, for example, but work as an ASEAN tandem, so that we can have a more bargaining power to negotiate the price. That's one sense, because rather than Indonesia is only speaking to the US. So this is a thing that we are trying to push in ASEAN's context, where the countries need to be more assertive. It's starting to be in the good mood. I mean, like, if friends and colleagues here that looking to the national power development plan of Indonesia, you may start to see the cross-border interconnection between Indonesia and Malaysia. The latest power development plan from Thailand is also deleting some coal power plant from the previous one, but then adding the cross-border interconnection from the neighboring countries. So the country is starting to adopt this regional collaborative effort to address our challenge together. And this is applied for renewable energy. Like Indonesia has a lot of resource on renewable energy, but Singapore is the center of research. We have a solar research institute in Singapore. I am Indonesian, but I can say this is the best research center in ASEAN. So I always advocate it. Indonesia doesn't need, maybe from Indonesia context different, but I'm speaking on the ASEAN perspective, that Indonesia doesn't need to build its own, for example. Why don't we harness, capitalize that's what Singapore has, what the Philippines also has, what the Malaysia is one of the largest solar PV manufacturing. So, but why we don't capitalize the strengths of each of countries to addressing our common challenge that we are encountering in ASEAN. So that's my general. I hope I'm not crossing the line. I'm ASEAN speaking that one, to address the question that how we capitalize our strengths. 10 countries, that's a bit, and then how we address the supply chains. Supply chains doesn't need to belong Indonesia. We can talk that some part of it's coming from the Philippines, some part of it's coming from Malaysia, Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam. And ASEAN currently adopts standards and labeling system. So the air cooling produced in the Thailand is already fulfilling standards in Indonesia that can be also distributed and sell in Indonesia. Same case with what we have in Indonesia. So everyone doesn't have to be a center. But this is a problem that we have, particularly on the gas issue. As I'm speaking, that we want to purchase gas as the ASEAN, but the next question is, where is the center of it then, right? So this is where coming the tension that Indonesia want to be a center of the gas hub in the region. Thailand is also want to be a center of the gas hub in the region. Singapore is with its 11 million ton per annum of LNG reconfiguration is always saying that they are the best place to be a center on that one. But unless we will able to address this own conflict, that it will be very difficult for us to capitalize ASEAN strength. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Beni. Now it's questions from Bening to Kentaro. How will this ASEAN 2045 ASEAN shared future address gas and renewable energy procurement? And do you think there will be an increase in intra-ASEAN purchases on gas and renewable energy?
Thank you for your question about the gas. Yeah, so yeah, as I mentioned in my presentation, the ASEAN region is going to be net gas imported from the 2027, according to the baseline scenario. But I think if we want to go to the energy transition, the gas shift will be our key part of the strategy. Yeah, so the more and more gas will be necessary to meet the demand also, but at the same time, they're reducing their CO2 emissions from the coal or oil to gas switching. Yeah, so I think and also the gas pipeline in the region is quite limited in the current state. So the most of the gas is coming from the outside of the region as a LNG style. Yeah, so I think it's very important to secure the LNG in the in the various contracts, such as a long-term contract or spot procurement and so on, from the various kind of resources. From now, I think the ASEAN is importing the LNG from mainly Australia and also the Qatar, outside of the region, but also seeking the opportunity to procure the LNG from the other region, like the United States or something like that, is a very important factor to maintain the energy security in the coming future. Yeah. Yeah, my my answer is making sense? Yeah, so.
Thank you, Mr. Kentaro. So let's proceed to Sang-Young's questions from Korean Mission to ASEAN. The question is dedicated to Pak Beni. So do you think nuclear energy will be visible in the future, particularly in the context of geopolitical rivalries?
Okay. Allow me to speak on the technical perspective, right? It's gonna be that nuclear. I mean, many ASEAN countries exploring nuclear as part of action for them to fulfilling our energy demand. Mentioned earlier that the energy demand as ASEAN will be rising very high, and we cannot afford to rely on the few source or the particular source only. So ASEAN need to look all options, which is including the nuclear power development. We have a down moment after Fukushima, right? I mean, many ASEAN plans, the countries plan on the nuclear is being freeze. But for the last 2 or 3 years, that we have seen that a number of countries is reviving their plan on the nuclear power plant. We do have Indonesia. In the latest power development plan is also indicated to have a nuclear, I think somewhere between 2032 or 2025. Philippines in the front line of this effort with the executive order that's really looking at the issue of the nuclear power plant. Recently, Malaysia, the Prime Minister in the 13th national planning is also indicated that nuclear will play a role in the future's energy landscape, and they enacted again the NAPIO with my power to be appointed on that one. And I mean, this could be us. We are the ASEAN Center for Energy is continue to support this exploration mode, and so we facilitate the engagement of the countries with the various dialogue partners or the technology providers. ASEAN has a cooperation with US on the nuclear topics. ASEAN has a cooperation with China, Japan, and Korea, as well as Russia. We at the ASEAN Center for Energy is helping the countries, facilitating the countries to exploring all kind of the options that the countries are looking on. The preference for a country might go, it goes with the national sovereignties. But for us, that we provide the assessment, we provide facilitation that before deciding what kind of technology that the countries will go, or what kind of countries that they like to pursue, that the country have a proper information on that one. SMR is very favorite topic and the discussion on the nuclear, so it seems like everyone is looking in the topic of the SMR. From ASEAN context is also one of the subjects, exploration mode. But on my personal note, that I think seeing what this country engaged recently, that countries might go with the no with the SMR for their first choice on the nuclear. So they may go with Gen 3 or Gen 3.5 technology, which to many contexts is a technology proven, and that is very much aligned with the regulation that exists in a number of countries. We may refer to the regulation of the countries that saying that if they choose the nuclear technology, it's much technology that proven for over decades, which SMR not the case that we have today. But not to, I'm not saying that the country is not exploring the SMR. There is a continuous effort to explore the SMR, but my personal thought that looking from what the country's doing right now, they will continue with the existing technology. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Beni. Let's move on to Rena's questions from the Taiwan Economic and Trade Office, Jakarta. The question is dedicated to all of the speakers. So regarding renewable energy collaborations, Taiwan is now advancing its renewable energy transitions. So what are your views on the current progress of green energy development in ASEAN member states and the potential for collaboration with Taiwan as technology exporters? So who wants to start first? So Kentaro, do you want to start first? Okay.
Thank you very much for your question. Could you share my presentation, slide number 11? Sorry. Yeah, I think this is a good reference for the renewable energy, installed renewable energy needed to achieve the carbon neutrality. Yeah, so we conducted the energy modeling under the constraints of the carbon neutrality target for each ASEAN countries, and doing the cost optimal calculation and developing the energy mix toward the 2060. And in this graph, the renewable energy is indicated in the yellow, the solar, and also the light green wind. And you can see there are significant potential of solar energy in ASEAN region, while the wind energy is quite limited in terms of the limited potential and low capacity factors in this region. Yeah, so I think the main renewable energy resources for ASEAN will be solar power in the future. But when looking at the current level of the installation of the solar power, it's only about, we can hardly see the yellow part of the 2022 graph. But we have to, if we want to achieve the carbon neutrality, according to the national country's target, we have to increase the solar power quite rapidly. Yeah, so for example, in 2030, the solar power is jumped up from the current level. Current level is about I can see the I can see the number of this figure, but I think there in 2030, at least we have to increase the solar power by 10 or 9 times compared to the current level. Yeah, but I think when looking at the current progress of the nuclear power, the renewable power installation in the ASEAN region, I think, for my opinion, it's still quite slow pace compared to the ideal pathway to carbon neutrality. Yeah, so I think the current level of the assessment for the the renewable power installation is depending on what level do we really want to achieve by when. But if we really want to achieve the carbon neutrality by the national target, I think the current progress is not so enough. Yeah, so maybe additional measures or policy development will be necessary to support the renewable integration.
Thank you, Mr. Kentaro. How about what's your take, Pak Sofwan?
Well, what can Taiwan do? I think any help will do, because now, ASEAN is very much lagging behind. The global clean energy investment is now gaining momentum and growing significantly, but ASEAN is very much not yet in that momentum. For example, around 2 trillion USD was invested in clean energy technologies and infrastructure, and the investment in clean energy has surpassed investment in fossil fuels globally. But in Southeast Asia is among the few regions, or even the only region, where the annual renewable energy investment is smaller in 2024 than in 2019. So any help to invest in renewable energy would be very beneficial. And I think the issue with investment in renewable energy is not only about financing. Yes, investment is an important part, and of course partners like Taiwan as well as other countries could help mobilize and attract the financing for that. But of course it takes two to tango. Why investment are not really coming into Southeast Asia is also pretty much related to the political factors and the governance factors within the region. So in that sense, by helping ASEAN strengthen the regional cooperation in renewable energy by For example, developing a clear roadmap, harmonization of regulations, that would also help ASEAN to achieve its goals, and partners like Taiwan could also play a role in that sense. So first is of course mobilizing investment in any kind of renewable energy in the region. Second, helping ASEAN to strengthen its institutional capacity in a way which creates a more institutional robustness to attract and mobilize funds to the region. And third is helping to develop the capacity of the bureaucracy, as well as in ensuring technology transfer to the region. Transition towards renewable energy is costly, and thus, of course, capital matters, technology matters, and institutional factors matters. And I think in those three things, external partners like Taiwan could help support ASEAN to strengthen those three things. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pak Sofwans. So last but not least, Pak Beni, what's your take on that?
Thank you. It's not a good story, but let's go with the fact that ASEAN supposed to have 23% of renewable energy in the energy mix by end of this year. That's a target that we set 10 years ago, right? Today, the number that we have is only 13% of renewable energy. In 10 years ago, it's 9%. So for the last 10 years, ASEAN is only moving 4%, right? This is not something that we brought up. I mean, we at the ASEAN Center for Energy is trying to write an answer when the leaders, the ASEAN summits letter, and then announce why we are not able to achieve this target. That's the headaches that we have. But this is something that where ASEAN is trying to address in collaboration with the partner that we have. Pak Sofian mentioned the investment. In order for us to achieve the renewable energy target, for power generation only, ASEAN need $30 billion every year for the renewable energy power plant only. But for the last 10 years, the average is only $5 to $8 billion. So it's less than the quarter that what ASEAN is required, right? That's one of the issues that we have. So ASEAN is not attracting enough the investment on renewable energy. But of course, there's many reasons of that one: the political, the regulatory, the lot of red tape that we are encountering, something that we are trying to figure. But what is also echo what Pak Sofian mentioned, that the regulatory, the knowledge, the understanding about renewable energy is a challenge that we are encountering in ASEAN, right? We know renewable is intermittent, right? It can't survive 24 hours a day, right? But it doesn't mean we can't go with the renewable energy, right? If we have a proper planning, we have a backup system, if we have a battery system, that's something that can be done, right? But not everyone, or if I may say, many of the planner, be it from the ministry side, the regulatory side, or even in utility sides, it doesn't have enough capacity on understanding when renewable energy is being integrated to the system yet, right? So we don't really know that how to deal with this renewable energy, right? This somehow, to some context, is also creating why is renewable energy is very challenging for ASEAN, right? The utilities companies say that it's not about they're not favoring, but they don't have a proper knowledge, they don't have a proper tools, they don't have a better understanding that how to deal with this intermittent renewable energy, right? Because nobody wants to answer to the boss that why electricity is not 24 hours reliable and everything. So this is that we are trying that. Of course, we are very much open on investment. It is very much lagging, and of course, capacity buildings for the regulatory people. In many report, you may see there is a number that ASEAN or Indonesia need, I don't know, like hundreds billion for renewable energy, for example, right? But all of that numbers goes to the infrastructure projects. There is never numbers for the capacity building, for the regulatory enhancement, for the people's development. So we only focusing that how much the $1 billion that we are required to develop the renewable energy infrastructure projects. But we never, at least in my observation, we never really goes with the how much the number that we require to train the policymakers, to train the utilities people, to train all people, stakeholders involved in the supply chains to be better understand that how to cope with this renewable energy. And that's what we very much welcome. Like Taiwan can share the experience that from upstream to downstream system of the renewable energy to the ASEAN context, because we're not just dealing with manufacturing of it, but then how to really bring the renewable energy from upstream to the downstream, something that we are very much learned. But despite that, we are not progressing well. That's, the ASEAN continue to push on renewable energy targets, and very much welcome the support and collaboration from all of dialogue partners, Korea, Taiwan, and everyone's to the tables. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Babini, for your answers. And due to time constraints, I think we should wrap up our discussion. And please give a round of applause to all of our speakers. And once again, thank you so much, Pak Sofwan, Pak Beni, and also Mr. Kentaro for sharing your valuable thoughts with us. And I would like to thank our audience for actively participating in the discussion in this room, and also our participants on YouTube platforms. And please stay tuned on the Habibie Center social media account, because we still have a lot of Talking ASEAN seminars event and other interesting events as well. So thank you for your attention and good afternoon.
For the power plant.